Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
For decades, government largely funded discovery and let the market handle commercialization. NSF is now building new pathways to move promising technologies from the lab into the economy. Joining me to explain that effort is NSF's Assistant Director for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships, Dr. Erwin Gianchandani. Dr. Gianchandani, it's so great to have you back on the show. Thanks for joining me.
Terry, thanks for having me. Really looking forward to the conversation today.
I am too. NSF has 3 recent announcements: X Labs, the SBIR relaunch, and now tech accelerators. When you put those 3 together, they seem closely related, but I'd love to hear from your perspective. What does NSF see as the environment here that you're trying to address?
Yeah, sure. So let me just say, as you know, I help lead the Directorate for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships, the TIP Directorate at NSF that we stood up a number of years ago. And our focus within TIP specifically is around trying to be able to help accelerate the great research that's coming out of the basic sciences in the other directorates of the agency and helping to push that research out into the marketplace. And we want to do that to the point at which industry takes it up. We don't want to replicate or duplicate the great work that industry does here in the United States, but there is that sort of so-called valley of death that we're trying to be able to help researchers and students and talent get across with their great ideas and their great new discoveries and innovations. And so what you see with this portfolio in many ways is trying to be able to help plug various gaps that we see in the terrain when it comes to advancing science and technology to impact for the betterment of U.S. competitiveness and the U.S. economy in the long term.
Well, let's start up front with the X Labs. This is a very different model for NSF. What role are X Labs intended to play in this system?
Yeah, so one thing that I like to say about X Labs is, we at NSF have been on the front lines for the last 7 or 8 decades now, helping to champion basic science all across this country. And I think we have a great system that enables that. NSF funding largely academic institutions gives rise to new discoveries that we push into the industry sphere, and then industry marketizes, productizes going forward. But that's one model, right? And I think that what's really important for us is to not only be constantly innovating in the what are the new directions at the future of intelligence? What are the new directions around quantum phenomena? What are the new directions around advanced materials and matter? But also thinking about innovating in the how. How are we enabling the research enterprise in this country, growing the research enterprise in this country to be optimized and accelerate progress in these different areas? And so X Labs for us it's new, it's different. It's modeled off of some great work that's been pioneered by philanthropy around the notion of focused research organizations. Can we support independent research teams, provide them with a bit of a runway, some milestones that they have to hit that they self-describe, but provide them with a bit of runway so that they're not constantly in the mode of having to apply for research grants every few years out of NSF or other funding agencies, but rather they have a very specific challenge or hurdle that they're trying to overcome in science and technology, and be able to give them that runway to work at that. A team that's multidisciplinary, engaged from across different sectors, even academia, industry, et cetera, working together to be able to overcome that and ultimately get to the point of sort of a platform capability or technology that can unlock entirely new sectors of science or entirely new sectors of technology going forward.
So this sounds like a very basic science level of work.
Well, so I think what we're looking at is being able to, if you look at the couple of topic areas that we've already announced, one is around scientific instrumentation in particular. Really excited about imaging and sensing and how might we unlock entirely new approaches to imaging and sensing that could in turn feed back into basic scientific discovery and allow us to be able to map new biological concepts, new chemistry concepts, map the physical world in a variety of different ways going forward. And so I think we're looking to be able to get to platform capabilities where you're maybe familiar with technology readiness levels. The TRLs might help us move from 2 to 6, for instance, 2 to 5, 2 to 6, but at the same time, in this particular case with sensing and imaging around scientific instrumentation, that will then feed back into the scientific enterprise and drive further basic scientific discovery going forward. Quantum phenomena, the other topic that we have, again, trying to look at if we're really interested on the heels of the president signing an executive order earlier this week around quantum, for instance, if we're really interested in next generation quantum computing, sensing capabilities that have practical applications, one of the areas that's sort of a platform challenge, if you will, is around quantum interconnects and quantum photonics, allowing us to be able to stitch together these capabilities going forward. And so there's an area where we're really hoping for a team or multiple teams to be able to help move the research forward from a TRL around 2 or 3 up to 5 or 6 to be able to get us to the point that we can really have the inroads and the impacts around quantum technology that we all hope to see. And through all of this, there will be, we hope, feedback loops that will drive further basic science and feed forward loops that will drive further translational work as well.
Dr. Erwin Gianchandani is NSF's Assistant Director for Technology, Innovation, and Partnership. So understanding then what X Labs is supposed to do, you've relaunched SBIR and STTR with another $250 million. How do those two programs connect?
Yeah, so we're really excited about SBIR, STTR, and this relaunch, Terry. And I think we're really excited also for all of these portfolio programs that you're referencing. We have worked very closely with our colleagues at the White House and the Office of Science and Technology Policy and have some strong support from the leadership there as well. So you know full well that the SBIR program saw its authorization lapse at the end of September of last year, and we went through a process. Congress passed legislation. The president signed it into law back in April, and so we have been able to now, over the last month or so, reboot our SBIR program here at NSF. I'm proud of the fact that NSF helped pioneer the SBIR program for the rest of the federal government back in the 1970s and 1980s. And today the program has been adopted by 11 or so other agencies that invest in R&D. So our investment, $250 million, goes towards some of the earliest stage startups just coming out of the research lab, trying to find a path forward to really develop their technology to the point that it can be picked up by mergers and acquisitions and others in the industrial space, or these startups can become flourishing companies in their own rights as well. I'll note that Qualcomm, a leading wireless company today, has its roots in an NSF SBIR many decades ago. But what's exciting about this particular relaunch is that we have set aside about $40 million of our portfolio this year specifically to focus a pilot effort around scientific instrumentation. So you sort of see a recurring theme across some of our programs that we're talking about today. We've heard from the research community the need to be able to not only fund the science, but fund the instrumentation that allows us to be able to unlock great new discoveries going forward. And what we find oftentimes is that in the space of scientific instrumentation, there may not be that strong venture capital community that's ready to go after some of these early stage startups. And so we've invested in this space in the past, but we're really putting an emphasis or spotlight on it as part of our SBIR relaunch to say, if you have some emerging ideas from basic scientific discovery that could lead to better instrumentation, more precise measurement, more precise sensing, more precise imaging, or the next lab view, for example, in certain trade spaces, certain fields of science and engineering. Well, bring that idea forward. We'd love to help you de-risk it, help you get it to the point where it's now able to feed back into the scientific enterprise going forward.
And then it sounds like the third leg of the stool is the Tech Accelerator Program. This is very different. How does it connect or take those two programs to the next level?
Well, so I would say that I think each one of these programs is an initiative in its own right that, as I mentioned earlier, is really about trying to help move science to its greatest form of impact at the end of the day. X Labs is taking that bet on a set of teams, really focusing on the teams and the ambitions of those teams around some platform technologies that we're looking to help accelerate. SBIR, maybe you have some startups that emerge, for instance, from an X Lab. You want to be able to see those startups further develop some of the outputs to the point that they're now in the commercial market space. Tech accelerators for us is a little bit different, but related, as you pointed out. Here, the focus is, let's look at some of the areas that maybe we know the venture capital community is not investing as heavily in today, right? If you look at some of the trends over the last year or two, a lot of investment in AI, for example, a lot of increasing investment in quantum and aerospace and defense and so forth. But there are other areas that are critical importance to the nation's competitiveness in the long term as well, that we also need to make sure we are helping to push ideas into the mainstream. So, for example, let's consider the space of ocean technologies, right? Maritime technologies. We've seen in the last few months the significance of this area, for example. And so here's an opportunity for us to essentially invest in an accelerator type organization, new partnerships that are coming together, bringing perhaps the VC community, perhaps private sector interests, perhaps academic researchers, new partnerships that could coalesce together to form an accelerator that has the expertise to help guide in turn a set of teams that are working in that space around ocean and maritime tech, and help those teams, much smaller teams focused on specific problems or specific use cases, help those teams push their ideas into the market space as quickly as possible. I would hope that a tech accelerator, for instance, might connect in with the SBIR program. It might connect in with our NSF I-Core program as well, which is providing folks with the opportunity to get sort of this exposure around how you do customer discovery to understand what your market niche is for your idea that you are pursuing. So the tech accelerator really is trying to help bridge multiple micro valleys, if you will, in the valley of death, helping researchers in these focused areas like maritime tech or ag tech or materials tech, or another one, a common refrain, scientific instrumentation, sci-tech we're calling it here, help them be able to get the mentoring and the support to take their concept and move it forward along that pathway.
Each of these is an exciting initiative in its own right, but when you put them together, there really is a pattern, a desire to take technology and move it to market scale. If it works, if all of them work the way you envision them, what do you think will be different 3 or 5 years from now in the scientific research space?
Well, I'm hoping that over time, I would actually take each one of these a little bit separately, right? I would say with X Labs, for instance, we're taking all of these are pilot efforts, to be fair, but with X Labs, we're taking a bet on teams to be able to unlock new ideas. And a few years ago, a decade ago or so, there was the discovery of CRISPR-Cas in the biotechnology domain, which is today revolutionizing how we think about pharmaceuticals and other agricultural food production and so forth, right? That discovery took many decades and many grant cycles to be able to get to that point. And I think with X Labs, we're hoping that especially if we pick the right topics, X Labs shaped topics as we're describing them, we will be able to accelerate that type of outcome and really allow these teams to come together and short circuit having to constantly fight for grant funding over and over again to get to that output. With SBIR, it would be fabulous if we end up with a robust portfolio 5 years from now of entirely new scientific instruments that are now commercialized to the point that they are benefiting the scientific enterprise. And perhaps there are other such topics that we could consider as well. And with tech accelerators, I think part of our goal here is to be able to crowd in funding, leverage co-funding, leverage additional resources from venture capital and other investors. So to be able to bring them into some of these technology spaces where perhaps there's a bit less focus, a bit less interest today, but they are nevertheless really critical for U.S. competitiveness in the long term. So 5 years from now, seeing more investment in these spaces and seeing the outputs of those investments being realized in real world senses, I think those would be some stellar outcomes from these efforts.
Dr. Erwin Gianchandani is NSF's Assistant Director for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships. Thanks so much for joining me today and walking through these programs with us.
Well, thanks for having me, Terry. Thanks as always for your interest. And I say to your listeners, we're open for business. We look forward to engaging with them on these efforts going forward.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.